And it's like the newness wears off, the shininess goes away, and next thing you know, you're like, well, now I want this instead. And so it's this perpetual game of chasing shiny objects, where if you actually stopped, turned around, and looked at your life and everything that you truly had, now you can say, wow, I can't believe that I made it this far. Because you had the gratitude for what you've already done, your life becomes so much more clear, and then you end up being actually even more successful. I was just over in the shop working, and I was listening to something that was actually completely contradictory to the video that I just recently posted before this one. And in that video, I talked about following your passion. If you're gonna build your own little business and build it into something potentially great, you really need to love what you're doing. And then on the other side of that, what I heard today, which I do also agree with, is this person says, don't follow your passion, you need to follow the math. And so if you follow your passion and you can't make any money at it, then you're just never going to make any money, and you're going to waste all your time doing this thing that you're passionate about, but you're going to be broke forever. And I agree with that too. But that's why I decided to basically drop everything in the shop, run over here and film this, because I think this is really important. We need to back it up and decide, what do we actually want? So clearly there's multiple ways of finding success. And I think it's more important that we sit back and ask ourselves what it is that we are after in the long run. See, when I first got started doing all the Hunt Primitive stuff, it was specifically that I wanted to do what I wanted to do every single day. I didn't need to make a ridiculous amount of money. I just wanted to be very comfortable, live a good life, try to reduce as much stress as possible, and I wanted to do the things that I enjoy. So I think back to when I was in school, and all I could think about during school all day was I wanted to get out of school so I could go do whatever it is that I wanted to do. And that even led then into going to work. I remember getting out of school going, I have to go to work now. I don't want to go do this. At least I thought, well, at least I'll be making some money. Well, then of course, as you start getting these bills coming in, you're realizing you're just working to pay these bills. And next thing you know, you're like, I have to go to work every day to do something I don't like to do. And all I'm thinking about is getting off work and in the evening, how I can rush out and do all the things that I want to do for me. I'm wasting my life doing something that I don't want to do, living for the weekends. And that's how most people go through life. And so this is where I finally asked myself, what is it that I want? Do I need to have a lot of really fancy things to make me happy, or would I rather have my time back? And it was an easy decision for me. I wanted my time. I didn't need to live big. Now it just kind of grew into where we have become very financially stable and pretty well off overall, because I've taken it to that next level, but it didn't start out as that. So I'm not saying you have to choose between money and freedom, because you don't have to choose, but you really do need to sit back and ask yourself, do I just want the freedom, or do I really want the money? And you're going to weigh a lot of that out too, and then say, well, yeah, but if you have all this money, then you also have more freedom. So if I go to work and I make a whole bunch of money, or I start a business that even if I don't like it, this way when I am living for the weekend, when I do the weekend, I get to go do all these big cool things. So that would be your choice as well, where I would say I would rather not live for the weekend, I would rather live for every day. And so therefore, I would rather do exactly what I want to do, even if that potentially meant living a much smaller life. Like even now, if we were to pull all of this back and say, if you were going to do it all over again, would you still, and let's just say I wouldn't even be as successful as I am now, say, would you rather do this because you love it, or would you go back and maybe get a job or start a business that you're not as passionate about, but it's going to make you a lot of money? 100 times out of 100, I'm going to come right back to what I'm doing because I love to do it and I'm passionate about it. But then, of course, on the flip side is somebody that really just wants the money. You also have to be careful, because if you have the love of money, a love of success and a love of freedom and a love of happiness is different than a love of money. So a love of money won't actually get you happiness, and sometimes really won't even get you freedom, because then you'll be tied to whatever it is. If you could have a very large company and you still may not be able to pull back from it, because the wheels will come off if you're not attached to it. So you'll end up still working your life away, not spending time around your family, not doing the things you want because you're in search of all the money. Now, if that is the journey that you want because it genuinely makes you happy, if that is kind of what drives you, you're happiest when you're just making all this money and taking big expensive trips and buying fancy cars, well then that's absolutely what you should do. And there's a lot of people that are like that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just not how I'm built. But it reminds me of the Mexican fisherman parable. So hang with me a second. I'll work through the Mexican fisherman parable, and then I'm hoping as I work through the parable and it finishes that you'll be able to have a better way to look back and say, okay, which one of these directions did I really want to go? And it doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be you're always going to go this way, the broke, living free but don't have any money sort of a deal versus being in huge business and making a ton of money. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be anywhere in between. Basically, I'm very much in between on these. So the Mexican fisherman parable is that you've got this older guy, middle age, perhaps my age. He lives out on the beach in Mexico, and he gets up every morning and he goes out onto his boat and he fishes. And he really enjoys fishing, and he's really good at it. I was able to relate to this because I love hunting and I'm really good at it. So he goes out and he fishes, and every morning he catches his fish and he's back in before lunchtime. He goes into the market, he sells his excess fish, gets a little bit of money, and then he goes home and he's got his money plus he's got the fish that he caught that day. And so then he brings that into his wife, and his wife cleans it, and they prepare and maybe make a little lunch. And he likes to spend the rest of the day taking a nap with his wife, playing with his kids, having a couple cervezas with his buddies in the evening, and he's just as happy to go do that. And then he wakes up in the morning and he goes out and he goes fishes again, and it's the same cycle over and over and over. Well, one day he comes back in from fishing and he's got a really nice load of fish. And there's this guy that's on vacation from America, and he's got an MBA from a big leading university, and he's watching this guy come in and unload his fish, and he says, you're really good at this. But you're kind of doing it wrong. You do have a talent for this fishing, but what you should probably do is, instead of coming in at lunch, maybe come in and drop your fish off, but go back out. So instead of resting all day and enjoying, the day, if you'd put in twice as much time, you could catch twice as much fish. And then next thing you know, you can get a bigger boat, and then you can get a crew, and then the money you make from that, you can buy another boat. And then, but it's probably not going to really work to do it here in this small fishing village. You're going to have to probably go somewhere, off the coast of California or New York or some really big place, and you could have this fleet of fishing boats. Then they all go out and they get the catch, they bring it in. You can open your own cannery, and you will make tens of millions of dollars. And you could be so successful doing that. And the fisherman stops and he thinks, he says, that does sound pretty nice. He says, well, how long would it take to do that? And he goes, it'd probably take about 10 years or so, but and you'd have to leave here, so you'd probably have to leave your family or your friends or whatever, but you really put in the time, you could build a huge business. And he goes, okay. And then he says, so what happens after I've built the business? He goes, well, then you'd have the money. And he's like, okay. And he goes, and then if you really wanted to, you could sell the business. He says, well, okay. So how long is this going to take? Well, it's probably going to take you between 10 and maybe 20 years to do that. So, okay, I sell the business. And he goes, well, then what do I do? And he goes, well, then you could move to a little fishing village and buy a little house, and you could go out in the morning and fish for fun during the day. And then you could come back and spend the rest of the day hanging out with your family and your friends. You see what I'm saying here? So the Mexican fisherman parable is basically saying, be grateful for what you have, and if that's the life that you're living and you love it, don't necessarily get distracted by the shiny object of saying, I got to go out and make $1 million. Especially as young entrepreneurs start finding a little bit of success, one of the first things that their mind starts to go to is, okay, I finally got some money coming in. Where am I going to be able to spend all this money? Now I get to do cool stuff. Let's buy a jet. I am aspiring to have 3 different Ferraris in this big mansion and all of this stuff. And a lot of them Well, most of them don't ever achieve that, but they'll sure work trying to get there. But what most people do is they'll go into a massive amount of debt trying to get all of that stuff and essentially kind of ruin their life. But they will work their entire life away for these things that once you actually get them, you realize they don't actually make you happy. It's typically your freedom and the time that you spend with the people that you enjoy being around, that's where the true joy of life comes from. And so I've been able to look back at the Mexican fisherman parable and say, there are so many things that I could have done other than hunt primitive that would make more money. So even though I do very well at hunt primitive, there's been many times that I've taken a break, I went and sat on the porch and I thought, maybe I'm doing this wrong, and maybe instead of doing this, I should start building up another big company instead, and then I could make a lot more money. And then I had to ask myself, what am I actually going to do with the money? You know, take all these big trips? Do you want to buy, a yacht? Do you want to buy a jet? Be like, those things are cool, but it's like, I don't really like to go anywhere. It's like, so this is where it really rounded back for me, and my suggestion then to you would be this. Sit down and really picture what your life looks like in 10, 15, 20 years. Think about it. I don't know how old you are watching this. Now, if you're younger, you're probably like, I would love to live that baller lifestyle and have a mansion. You tend to grow out of that kind of stuff a little bit as you get older. And like I said, even if you do want that, that's fine. Go for it. If that's your dream and your goal, then I say buckle down and do it. At that point, I would say don't follow your passion. Get into something that's gonna pay you a lot more money. And I'm not saying go to college to be a doctor or something like that. They make pretty good money, but the money that you're talking about wanting is top 1%, top 2% in the country. Those are entrepreneurs. Those are hedge fund guys. Those are big business type of guys, and you're going to have to work your face off to get to that level. It is not going to come easy, but then realize the trade-off is you're not going to be doing the other things that you enjoy doing. You're going to be working your face off so you could have those other things, and you'll find that actually if you listen to a lot of interviews with billionaires and stuff, there's many of them that aren't very happy and they don't have much for family. There's a great story about that where a guy goes to visit this billionaire and he goes and walks through this absolutely gorgeous house. He goes into this huge office, the most expensive, beautiful wood furniture and library you've ever seen, all the stuff like you see in the fancy movies. And he goes and he sits down and he goes, man, this must be great. Your kids must love this. What a life to have. And he says, I don't have any relationship with my family. They don't talk to me anymore. It's because he spent all his time building that big, huge business. So anyway, I sat back on the porch one day quite a while ago and I said, what does my life look like 10, 15, 20 years from now? What if I could do anything in the world, what would really make me happy? And I got out a notebook and I wrote out all the different avenues. I could be wildly successful, have a very huge house, I could have all the expensive toys, or I could piddle around, not do much of anything, scrape to get by, have all the freedom in the world and do anything I want, or I could do as much as I want, try to build a business for a couple decades hard, but doing what I love, get a nice little cushion, a nice stepping stool for my children. And that's ultimately what I decided to do. So I think more importantly, rather than me telling you what to do, I think the best thing to do is for me to say, you should probably sit back and really envision what your life is going to look like. Map out a couple different paths and really think, what is it going to take to get here? And what you typically will find is most people will say, you know what I would really like to do is I would like to be more free with my time. If I didn't want to go to work today, it's not saying that I'm lazy, but you'd be like, if I wanted to take this hunting trip, I could go do that. Or I wanted to be able to afford to take the family to Disney World or whatever, that you don't have to worry about getting off of work, or you don't have to, where maybe you have to worry about getting off work, but it's not as big of a deal. You have plenty of money to do it. So I think everybody wants enough money to be very comfortable to do the things that you want. So you can't be super lazy and just lay around, but most people don't need to run that ridiculous, huge company that's going to take all the time in the world. So sit back and really ask yourself, what is it that you see your your future looking like, then map out those paths, and then eliminate all of that other stuff. The path that you choose, you look at all of those things and then say, this is what I'm going to do to get there. You literally draw yourself a roadmap. These are the things that I want, not the over the top things, but the realistic, happy goals. And then be very grateful for the things that you have along the way. As you achieve those goals, having gratitude and looking back on it is exceptionally important. I also see people that hit a lot of milestones and they start doing really well and they make money and they're growing and they're never looking back at the things that they've accomplished and created. All they're doing is, now I want this, now I want this, now I want this, because it doesn't matter what you have or how much you have, you always want something more. It's just ingrained in us to say, that's the next thing that I want. So you could buy something that you really, really love, and it's like the newness wears off. The shininess goes away after a few months, maybe a few years, depending on what it is. And next thing you know, you're like, well, now I want this instead. And so it's this perpetual game of chasing shiny objects, where if you actually stopped, turned around and looked at your life and everything that you truly had, now you can say, wow, I can't believe that I made it this far. And then you are so grateful for all of those things that you have. And then it's amazing how when then you turn around, because you had the gratitude for what you've already done, your life becomes so much more clear, and then you end up being actually even more successful because you have gratitude for what you have, and now you actually are getting back on that path. You're not getting off that path to, now I need a yacht, or I'm not going off the path of, I just don't want to work anymore and I want to retire. I think when you look back and you've enjoyed the journey, and the journey is truly the destination, okay? The journey is where you want to be. The journey is the fun. The journey is what's going to make you feel like you've accomplished something. Oftentimes the destination, getting the thing, is not the true end goal, because like I said, we're constantly moving the goalpost. As soon as you hit that one goal or whatever, you're just moving the goalpost. Sometimes it's nice to turn around in the end zone and look back and be like, haha, we did this. So have a lot of gratitude for it as well. So anyway, stew on a lot of that kind of stuff. Really ask yourself what you want, and then we'll curate a lot of information on this channel based on that. So again, if you enjoy the content, please share it so we can grow the channel a little bit. If you have questions, comments, please drop them down in the comment section here on YouTube, and we'll go through some of them. You can also email the questions to huntingforyourlife@gmail.com. We'll scroll through some, pick some of the best ones, and roll with them. So, all right, have a good one, and start building those plans.